Shipping is the concept revolving around two or more characters together and is a popular aspect of almost every major fandom of any popular media. Those who partake in shipping, also commonly referred to as shippers, tend to be heavily involved in creative work in their fandoms, which include the likes of fan fiction, fan animations, and fan art, which of course tend to relate to the most popular ships in any given media. The creators of said content often interact and take notice of what their fans like, causing them to make reference to their fans and the work itself. But what happens when a very popular ship takes over an entire fandom to the point where it takes over the entire show? Hi, my name is Pancakes, and join me as we deep dive into Bumbleby, the infamous RWBY ship, and its notorious dominance in online fandom spaces, eventually leading to its canonization within the show itself. So before I get into any of my main points of this video, I do want to go over some of my biases so you can determine whether or not you hate me within the next 30 seconds. So for starters, I used to watch RWBY, but I stopped watching around the beginning of Volume 7. However, I did keep up with the plot of every episode and every volume since then. If I'm being honest, while I did stop enjoying the show at that point, the main reason I stopped watching RWBY is because my brother canceled his Roosterteeth subscription, and I just didn't bother getting my own account, so... I think the show peaked around Volume 3. I know how certain parts of the fandom feel about that statement, so do with that information with what you will. And what I think is my biggest disclaimer is that I used to be a Black Sun shipper. Yeah, okay, I know, alright guys, I know, I suck. But I do not hate Bumbleby. In fact, I do actually like the ship in a vacuum, but hey, we'll get to that later. Also, hey other Black Sun shippers out there. How are you doing in the year of our Lord, 2023? You guys doing good? Yeah, me neither. And if it wasn't obvious at this point, massive spoilers for RWBY, like pretty much the entire series. Also, this is my first video, so I would very much appreciate it if you stick around to the end of the video. And if you like what I made, maybe hit the like button and that subscribe button so you can subscribe to my channel, maybe the bell icon so you can get notifications. Yeah, that'd be pretty cool, maybe. I would appreciate that if you did that. So, for anyone who doesn't know what RWBY is, which normally I would question why exactly you're watching this video, but my nosy ass used to watch a shit ton of Clans videos, despite the fact that I never actually watched anything from Voltron, so you do you, boo. RWBY is an animated web series that was highly influenced by anime. It was created by Monty Oum in 2013 and is produced by Roosterteeth Animation. The story of RWBY follows four girls, Ruby, Weiss, Blake, and Yang, who make up the members of Team RWBY. Volume 1 through 3 follows Team RWBY's time in school where the girls train to become huntresses, which is basically just monster hunters, and do other mundane high school anime girl things. But then at the end of Volume 3, the school kind of blows up, and so Volumes 4 through 9 follow a darker storyline where the girls race to save the world along with their quirky friends who are no longer quirky thanks to trauma. So that's essentially the plot of RWBY condensed down, but what the heck is Bumbleby? Well, Bumbleby refers to the ship between Blake and Yang, two of the main cast members. You see, in the RWBY fandom, ship names are not the typical slapping the characters' names together until you get something the fandom can use, but rather are these cutesy nicknames to represent the ship. For example, another popular ship in the RWBY fandom, White Rose, is the ship name between Ruby and Weiss, since Ruby's last name is Rose, and Weiss is usually represented by the color white, hence White Rose. Bumbleby comes from Blake and Yang's main colors being black and yellow, respectively. So, you know, like bees. It's also the name of Yang's motorcycle, but bees are cooler, so fight me. Like other fandoms, shipping is usually extremely popular within the RWBY fandom. However, amongst all the ships, Bumbleby stood out as the most popular. Bumbleby content was being made as early as Volume 1, but the ship exploded in popularity in Volume 2, after hints to the ship were made within the show itself. Now, was the pairing between Blake and Yang well written enough to deservedly be popular? Well, let's look at how the show handled the ship within its narrative. So Blake and Yang's relationship starts out relatively steady in Volume 1. There isn't really anything too substantial in their relationship. There's a few obvious reasons for this. Volume 1 mainly focused on RWBY because, wow, a show focusing on its main character, how innovative. Until it randomly started focusing on John, a literal supporting character that got a whole 3-episode bullying arc. Another reason was because of the episode lengths during Volume 1. Like, you literally had episodes that were like 5 minutes long, which makes the whole 3-episode bullying arc even more time-wasting. There's also a third reason, but we'll get to him later. In the end of Volume 1, Bumbleby was basically, you know, like when two classmates who don't really know each other get assigned to work in the same group project, but then at the end of the semester, they're like relatively good friends. Like, at the very least, they wave in the hallway to each other after the end of class. However, in Volume 2, things get a little spicy, as the cast gets to know each other better and talk about their backstories. Wow, character development through character interaction? Could you imagine that? All this character development between Blake and Yang led to the first grand Bumbleby moment that caused fans to cry and piss themselves all around the world. Yang asking Blake for a dance at prom. Now, without hindsight of what later happens in the show, I feel like the scene gets a bit muddled as a Bumbleby moment. Mainly Blake and Yang having very little focus at the dance, and Blake going to the dance with a certain someone who I hinted at earlier, who we'll get to in a little bit. I will say, though, that this is actually a really cute moment. Yang comforting Blake by sharing her own past and trying to get her to relax by taking her to the dance is really sweet and shows how much Yang cares about Blake. Whether you look at this scene as romantic or a platonic moment, it works to further develop Yang and Blake and their relationship. This transitions well into Volume 3, as we see the friendship between the two is questioned by Blake for a moment when Yang is publicly accused of breaking a dude's leg for shits and gigs. Of course, in the end, Blake stays by Yang's side and defends her, regardless if Yang actually broke that dude's leg. Now that's true love. This all leads up to Yang losing her arm after trying to fight Adam, Blake's ex-boyfriend and terrorist coworker. Don't question it. Now, I have some issues with this scene that I'll get into later, and I have a lot of issues with Adam as a whole, but that could be its own separate video that I will not make, but that could be its own separate video. But it's the scene of Blake and Yang that comes after, where Blake cries next to Yang's unconscious body and whispers apologies to her, that really sells the deal. Blake is a very closed-off character and is only seen being emotionally vulnerable around her close friends in closed-off areas, such as an empty classroom or in the middle of a courtyard in the middle of the night. But here, she is sobbing while tons of other people are around. This shows how much she cares about Yang and how sorry she is that she put Yang in this situation. It makes a later scene even more heartbreaking as we learn from Yang after she wakes up that Blake ran off after what happened at the end of Volume 3. Yang is very clearly hurt and angry that Blake left all of them, but you can tell that this anger is coming from a place of confusion on why someone she desperately cares about would supposedly abandon her after she bravely throws herself at Blake's attacker. But Blake left in the first place because she felt like she failed her friends, but that she mainly failed Yang, and her presence is only going to harm her friends more. This is a really good setup for a potential romance for the next few volumes. I wonder how they will continue it for the next couple of volumes. They don't! Yeah, so in Volume 4 and 5, because the main characters were split up at the end of Volume 3, so they weren't really hanging out with each other for character development to happen. So basically, Yang was home being sad, and Blake went to Furry Island. While I understand the story reasons to split up the two of them, the writers could have implemented more scenes where Blake and Yang were thinking about each other. Like, there's a couple scenes like that, but these two volumes could have used a few more of those types of scenes if there's really meant to be a romance built up between the two of them. Maybe like another scene where Blake is like, "But will Yang even trust me after what I did?" Or like a scene with Yang where she looks at a photo with Blake in it and the camera zooms in on Blake and Yang begins to cry. Just small moments like that would really flesh out their relationship. From everything you've all heard so far, you might be thinking, well, the writing is a bit bumpy, but they seem like a good match. Well, I'm about to hit you with the biggest reason the writing for a romantic relationship between Blake and Yang during Volume 4 and 5 is questionable. And it's because of Sun motherfucking Wukong. If you remember in my disclaimer, I mentioned the ship Black Sun. Well, Black Sun is the ship between Blake and Sun. Sun Wukong is a supporting character in RWBY that was introduced partway through Volume 1. During the first 5 volumes of RWBY, Sun kind of served as the foil for Blake. Pretty much almost every scene with Sun in it, Blake was there too. From my perspective and a lot of other viewers' perspectives, it seemed like Blake's romantic end goal was going to be Sun. Like, a majority of the scenes together felt romantic coded. Sun's introduction scene is literally the slow-mo shot where he and Blake make eye contact and he gives her a wink. Remember the dance episode that was a big deal for Bumbleby shippers? Sun is literally the one that takes Blake to the dance. In Volume 3, there's a scene where Sun looks back at Blake in a crowd, and she looks away and blushes. And while Yang and Blake were separated during Volumes 4 and 5, Sun was literally by Blake's side the entirety of those 2 volumes. They even did the stereotypical arc where Sun meets Blake's parents and Blake's dad is all like, my daughter's with a boy, and her mom is like, damn Blake, you gotta find catch, and Blake is all like, guys, stop. It's not like that. And I kind of feel like if these 2 weren't supposed to be together canonically, I think they should have either kept it strictly one-sided with Sun just being a major flirt and Blake being annoyed but appreciative of him, or maybe have them be together in some way but realize that they're better off as friends. Now, something like the latter does happen in the beginning of Volume 6, but we'll get to that soon. It's just so weird that they would write Blake and Sun's relationship like this, since it's been recently confirmed by the voice actresses of Blake and Yang that their characters were always planned to get together in the end. So why was it written like Blake x Sun was meant to happen? Well, assuming Blake and Yang were always supposed to be canon, there's a few reasons why this could have happened. I believe the main reason, though, is the writers didn't really know where to take the story after Volume 3. For those who don't know, during the production of Volume 3, the creator of RWBY, Monty Ohm, unfortunately passed away. After Monty's passing, there was most likely a struggle to determine where the story of RWBY should go after Volume 3. You can kind of see this throughout Volumes 4 and 5, especially 4, as the plot feels a lot slower and it doesn't feel like the characters are accomplishing much. So, with this information, it can be inferred that Blake and Yang's relationship storyline was shelved until they can figure out how to integrate it into the plot. Despite the unfortunate circumstances of Volumes 4 and 5, you think they would try to naturally incorporate Bumbleby into the plot of Volume 6. Maybe try to give Blake and Sun's storyline a proper conclusion? Well, she gives Sun a kiss on the cheek and then spends the rest of the volume cuddling up to Yang while we never see Sun again. So yeah, after Blake reunited with Team RWBY, Sun basically said, well, my work here is done, and then the writers just kind of benched him. The fate that befalls all supporting characters in RWBY. Personally, it's kind of weird that Sun was pretty much in almost every episode from volumes 1 through 5, only to be sidelined for pretty much the rest of the show. I'm not saying Sun should have gone with the main characters on their journey, but the fact that Sun isn't really brought up for the rest of the show is so weird, especially since he was an integral part of Blake's character. The writers could have added scenes where either Sun calls the characters, or Blake talks about her time with Sun and Menagerie. Stuff like that, so it doesn't seem like the writers just forgot about him. During the last scene where he has dialogue, yes, I am aware he does appear in Volume 8, shut up in the comments, he says that Blake doesn't need him anymore. This kind of just feels like the writers are trying to steer the audience away from any potential of a Black Sun ending. But what could have been added is maybe a scene where Sun talks to Yang to let her know how much Blake cares about her. This could have been a really cute moment and added more build-up to Bumbleby while naturally having Sun give up his feelings for Blake. So now that Black Sun is out of the picture, does this give Bumbleby a chance to steadily introduce itself back into the main plot? Yeah, no. So right out of the gates, it seems like Blake and Yang are immediately clinging onto each other and continue like this for the rest of the season. While I'm really down for the two of them reconnecting after not seeing each other for 2 volumes, it's kind of weird how they're immediately close after all that time. Like, yeah, it starts out with Yang being mad at Blake for leaving, but I'm not expecting Yang to be like, fuck you, Blake. But she should be like a bit more apprehensive around Blake. Maybe there could have been some more tension between the two of them as they reform their friendship. And we do get a bit of that tension early on in the volume, but then after that, they're back to just being pals and holding hands. In terms of this volume, the last thing to bring up is their fight with Adam. Now, having just Blake and Yang fight Adam makes sense. They both have stakes in this fight. However, there are a lot of weird inconsistencies during the fight that just don't really add up with all the things considered. Let's go back to the Adam fight in Volume 3. Adam straight up one-shotted Yang, but here Yang is able to stand toe-to-toe with Adam. Like, I know she just had a training arc, but like, sis literally just spent a few months punching a tree and beating her dad up, and you're telling me I'm supposed to believe that she's able to take on the dude that one-shot her arm and has one of the most OP semblances in the show? I know that there was a cut fight between Yang and Adam that was unused in Volume 3 due to Monty's passing, but when referring to the plot of the show solely, bringing up what could have happened isn't really relevant to the topic. Sorry I got distracted by the poor setup of this fight that I stopped talking about Bumbleby. So back in Volume 3, when Blake encounters Adam, he said that he's going to destroy everyone and everything she loves. You know, just cute things to say to your girlfriend, you know, just some cute things to say to your girlfriend. He then says, starting with her, referring to Yang. A lot of Bumblebee fans took this as proof for Blake and Yang being in love, but I feel like Adam was more so saying, I'm going to kill anyone you care about regardless if it's romantic or platonic, and Yang just so happened to pull up at the same time. Like, it's not like Adam knew Yang before cutting her arm off. Anyways, back to Volume 6. So mid-fight, Adam yells at Yang saying, what does she see in you? Which I don't know if the writers meant this as a, you're a human, why does Blake care about you? Or a, why does she love you and more than me? But this just seems like a really weird line to throw into the middle of a fight, especially from a character that hasn't been keeping up with Yang at all. But I feel like this has less to do with Bumblebee's poor writing and more has to do with the bastardization of Adam's character. Anyways, Blake and Yang kill Adam, they hug, you know, just girly things, kill your ex, and forehead touch. And that's pretty much it for Volume 6. This volume was kind of the snowball that would lead into the avalanche of Bumblebee content. The entire fandom kind of exploded after this volume. And I think this is where a lot of fans were divided in the RWBY community. You had one side of the fandom that was absolutely drooling over the idea of Bumblebee becoming canon. Then you had the other side that was saying that the relationship was clearly forced into the show. There was also a lot of drama going on behind the scenes at Roosterteeth, but I'm not going to go into that in this video. I will talk about the actions of the Bumblebee shippers later though. Going into the next 2 volumes, I'm just going to go into 7 and 8 together since in terms of Bumblebee content, they're pretty similar. It's mostly just outward or awkward flirting with the occasional affectionate moment of holding hands and pressing foreheads together. There were concerns, however, growing in the fandom about queerbaiting in the show. For the past 3 volumes, Bumblebee had been heavily implied, but it seemed like the writers had no plans to actually make them canon. Many viewers assumed this was done because the writers knew that Bumblebee was relatively divisive amongst the fanbase, so it was theorized that the writers were doing this to appeal to both Bumblebee shippers and anti-Bumblebee watchers. When in actuality, they just pissed off both sides as shippers just wanted their ship to become canon and antis didn't want Bumblebee content at all. So there was kind of no winning on the writers' part outside of the die-hard RWBY fans. Also, Volume 8 was when a lot of RWBY watchers jumped ship since, being as constructive as possible, it was shit. It was also after the season that a lot of drama about Roosterteeth animation came out, so a lot of ex-RWBY fans didn't really want to support the company after that. So this leads into Volume 9. After some delay due to COVID and the previously mentioned drama, Volume 9 finally released. Bumbleby in the first half of Volume 9 was a lot of the same content that was happening in Volume 7 and 8. You know, your standard flirting and hugging affair. Fun fact, this video was actually supposed to be about how Bumbleby should be canon rather than needed to be canon. That was until Chapter 6 of Volume 9 was released. In this episode, many Bumbleby fans were able to finally celebrate as they finally got what they dreamed for. That's right, Blake and Yang confessed to each other and finally kissed. The choirs and cheers of Bumbleby shippers all around the world were heard. And when I mean the world, I mean Twitter. Out of context of this episode, I actually really like this scene. It's just Blake and Yang saying all the things they've never said to each other before, finally saying, "I love you" to each other, before finally kissing. Plus the music. Now I know I'm worth, can't you see? Here we're meant to be. Overall, a good scene. However, in terms of the episode, it doesn't really fit in, and the scene low-key comes out of nowhere. Like, did you really need to separate them from the party by having some random magical bullshit teleport them? Also, why is this scene happening halfway through the volume in the middle of an episode? Like, not, you know, during an essential episode, or, you know, there's just like a part of their guys just like slapped in the middle of the season. Why not? Like, we gotta throw it in there somehow. Plus the fact that they literally had to take the characters away from the main conflict for an entire volume in order for them to have character development. Volume 9 as a whole just feels like a D&D campaign arc where the Dungeon Master didn't know what direction to take their story in, so they just throw their party into the Feywild while they figure out their campaign. Sorry I got sidetracked again by bad writing. I will say though that having this scene happen in the middle of the volume helped create the best meme in RWBY in the longest time, which is of course the homophobic RWBY meme. Basically, in the following episode, RWBY yells at her team due to her mental distress and turns her anger towards Yang and Blake. This moment turned into a viral moment on Twitter that even caught the attention of Moist Critical, which caused a Twitter feud, but that's a topic I'm not going to delve into here. Overall, though, Blake and Yang's confession was mostly met with a positive response, although it probably helped that most of the remaining RWBY watchers were either Bumbleby shippers, did not care if Bumbleby became canon or not, or due to sunk cost fallacy, have been watching the show for the past 10 years and just want to reach the end at this point. So that's it for Bumbleby in terms of the show, but what about the fandom? Well, Bumbleby shippers have a bit of an infamous and ravenous reputation. Basically, they're known for attacking people who don't like their favorite ship. While obviously I don't think this represents the entire Bumbleby community, this behavior was still prevalent enough for Bumbleby shippers to gain this reputation. This may have been part of the reason why the implied Bumbleby scenes in Volume 6 were so poorly received. However, I do think the anti-Bumbleby community have their own toxic tendencies, even being borderline homophobic at times. As someone who's not a Bumbleby shipper and never did ship it, I think it's stupid to attack someone for liking a ship, but I also think it's stupid to attack someone for not liking a ship. The whole purpose of a fandom is to be able to connect with people in the same community, and that community is going to fall apart if we just keep beating each other up based on whether or not anime girls like each other. Just like what you like, hate what you hate, and don't enforce your opinions onto others. So is Bumbleby well written? No, but neither is RWBY. And if you disagree with me, that's okay. At the end of the day, it's shipping, and shipping is, or rather was, supposed to be fun. I used to really like RWBY, and it's rough seeing the community and show fall off the way it did. While I never shipped Bumbleby, I also have no problem with it being canon, and fully believe that it needed to become canon. Although I spent most of this video dissecting why it's not well written, I still think it's more important for there to be an established relationship between Blake and Yang, rather than having the characters be stuck in a will they won't they limbo forever. So yeah, that's my video on Bumbleby. Once again, I have no hard feelings on Bumbleby. I do think it's a good ship. I think it's a, you know, it has its moments. I just think it's could have been better written. And, you know, I hope, you know, the RWBY community as a whole doesn't see this video as an anti-RWBY video in any way. Because I do wish good things for the RWBY, you know, show. I want, you know, mad respects to, you know, the animators that had to, you know, deal with what they had to deal with behind the scenes at Roosterteeth. And, you know, kudos, of course, to the voice actors for the most part. So, you know, I do want good things for the RWBY fandom. And I appreciate you all if you stayed around to the end of the video. And if you didn't just leave in the first 30 seconds, I appreciate you. So if you're still here, I think you should probably just hit that subscribe button, wherever it may be. I don't know where it is. And also that like button. And who knows, I might be around again very soon. So thank you for being here. Bye.